Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast. Today, we bring on a hometown kid, just a local legend in a lot of ways, and he is the current assistant women's basketball coach for Cal State University of Bakersfield, and he was also formerly the assistant basketball coach for the men's program as well. He got a full Division I scholarship to play at CSUB, and I know, Zach, you and your family have known this young man for a long time.
Yeah, man. Zach's one of the good ones, man. You know, speaking on the basketball court, the numbers that and stats that he put on the court are undeniable. It's going to be a real pleasure talking to him today on the show.
Yeah, I mean, he shared so much advice for whether it's kids coming up or just, people trying to maybe get a scholarship themselves to go play at the next level. But it was a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Zack Grasmick to the podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast. Today, we have a really great guest on, local hometown kid, Mr. Zack Grasmick. And he is the assistant coach for CSU Bakersfield women's basketball program. So welcome to the show, Zach.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so on the Quest for Success podcast, we have a little segment called the Mental Minute. It's just some kind of questions to get us fired up. You know, anything we do in sports, we got to get warmed up, both mentally and physically, and we're going to try to get warmed up today. So the first question is, your most embarrassing moment as a coach or player?
As a player, I think the one that stands out the most, I saw this question earlier, and the first thing that came to mind was, I believe it was my sophomore year at Cal State Bakersfield. We were playing down at Rabobank Arena. And it was a pack the stands night. So it's where they tried to get as many people in there as possible. And we broke an attendance record that night. I think we had close to 6,800 people in there.
Nice.
And I remember there was a loose ball at half court. And unfortunately, I wasn't one of the first ones to the floor, which is kind of a thing. Like you always want to be the first one to the floor. And I came over there late, and there was a pile. And one of the guys from the other team was standing near the pile, so I came up and kind of bumped him from behind. And I didn't think I pushed him that hard, but I guess I did, and he goes over the pile. Well, in doing so, his foot goes flying up, hits me where you don't want to be hit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep it PG for the podcast, but hits me where you don't want to be hit. And, you know, that initial reaction, you don't care where you are. Yeah. You don't care who's watching, like, you scream, you grab and everything. And I did that right in front of, 6,800 people. And it was so bad. And I guess it was so dramatic. The guy who did our radio at the time had to cut to commercial because he was laughing so hard. And at the time, I didn't think it was that embarrassing until I saw
it.
Yeah, I saw it on camera. I saw the playback, and it was like, okay, you were a little dramatic there. But again, you just kind of black out. You forget where you are. And it happened on the other end of the court, and so I walked the entire length of the floor, just completely dramatic and
waddling.
Yeah, that's probably, I mean, I've taken some losses in my life, but but that was probably the one that stands out the most.
Okay. Next question, leading into it. Who is your favorite athlete and why?
That one's tough. I have two. I can't pick one. I have two. I grew up playing both basketball and baseball. I played baseball until my senior year of high school. And Derek Jeter was my favorite player. And I guess him and my favorite basketball player kind of have a lot in common.
Go hand in hand.
Yeah, but Derek Jeter was my favorite baseball player. Everything I did on the baseball field, I tried to do like him. And then my favorite basketball player, obviously, I grew up in the time of Michael Jordan, so that was mine. I'm not here for the LeBron debate. I'm not here for the Kobe debate. I was a Michael Jordan guy, and I will be a Michael Jordan guy. And so, Jordan was my favorite by far.
Your most memorable win or moment in your career this far? Playing or coaching, I guess.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, both playing and coaching. All my most memorable wins have probably been anytime we beat Fresno State.
Yeah.
I'm from the Valley. So, I'm kind of caught in the middle. So, as you guys know, we're in the middle of Bakersfield and Fresno, and there's always been this rivalry between Bakersfield and Fresno. And we're, a lot of people look at us as Fresno State's little brother.
Right.
Just because, Fresno State's been around a lot longer at the Division I level. And so, sometimes down there at Bakersfield, we feel like we don't get the respect we deserve. So my senior year playing, we beat Fresno State in Bakersfield. No one gave us a chance to win that game, and we did. My mom about lost her mind because she doesn't like Fresno State at all. She just that's how she is. And then we've beat them a few times while I've been coaching. And so, for me, that's just being a Valley kid. It means a lot. Obviously we respect that program. When I played, we respected them. Now that I coach, my friend coaches there, and obviously we know what they have, and so we respect them. But anytime we can beat them, we love it. We cherish it.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Yeah. So Zach, I mean, how did you get into sports? Did you started? I'm guessing at a young age. Playing at you played at Granite Hills High School in Porterville, and did your parents play sports? Like, what was that kind of dynamic growing up?
Yeah, my mom says she's an athlete. She really wasn't. I think she was kind of into tennis. She'd do that every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, her claim to fame when it comes to sports is she is the only person that's beat me in horse. She beat me over at Pismo Coast Village when I think I was about 6 years old. We were playing out there, and she beat me, and she's never played me since. She will not play me. She got the ball. She walked off.
She's going out on top.
Well, I threw an absolute fit. But, yeah, so she wasn't really an athlete. My dad... but she loved basketball. Her and my dad used to go to all the high school, junior college games around here. So she's definitely a fan. She knows what's going on. She's smart when it comes to sports. But my dad was the sports junkie, basketball, baseball, likes football, but not crazy about it. But he definitely sparked that in me. He had me in sports from an early age. I mean, I was playing basketball, baseball when I was 4. Basketball, baseball. I played soccer until I got busted in the nose with the ball and bloody nose all over the field. Changed my mind real quick. And then I think that's when my dad realized, well, he's not a football player either, so we're not doing that. But I kind of grew up playing everything, dabbling in everything, but, basketball and baseball were my sports. And my parents just obviously fueled that. I was blessed to have parents that, poured everything into that and encouraged it. So,
yeah, that's good. You're a small town guy, we grew up together, right? Strathmore and stuff like that. Tell me what that was like for you, within your career coming from a small town.
I love my hometown. I think it definitely made me who I am. Anyone that asks me, I'm really proud. A lot of times I'll start with, they'll ask me where I'm from, and I'll start with Porterville, and see if they know where that is. And if they know where that is, I tell them Strathmore. But I make sure to always tell people I'm from Strathmore, and a lot of times I pronounce it as Strafas. I mean, that's where I'm from, and that's who I am. All my friends are from there. My best friends are all from there. That town is, where I learned about life. It's towns where I grew up. I know I went to Granite Hills, but I'm very passionate about where I'm from. If I said anything otherwise, my mother, who's very important to me, would absolutely kill me. You know her. You know how she is, and she would throw a fit. So any chance I get, I love representing my hometown. I love representing Strathmore, Porterville, and just letting everyone know that I'm from here, because I do feel like sometimes this area gets overlooked. Like I said, a lot of people look at Bakersfield and Fresno, and they forget that there's an entire central section here.
Yeah.
And there's really good athletes. There's really good people living in this area. And so any chance I get to bring, light to it, I love to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so important to stay true to, who we are and stay true to those roots. Right.
Right.
And like you said, there's so much talent in these little towns where you go to, Fireball with Josh Allen and all these guys that come out of these small towns, Porterville and Strathmore, and you just keep naming them. So
right.
that's I like that. So Zach, I mean, you you went to Granite Hills. Did you start young playing basketball, or did that kind of come later?
No, I played basketball and baseball from an early age. I started playing when I was, like I said, when I was 4. I think that might have been the first like league I was in. But I may have started shooting a basket before. I know I had a basket in the kitchen that I was dribbling and driving my dad crazy with when I could, walk. But the first real leagues, I think, were like 4 years old.
Yeah.
I played. There was a little league in Strathmore I played in, and then I was doing t-ball. I hated t-ball though because, they don't. If you hit the ball and you throw them out at first, they're not out. They stay on the bag. And so I used to throw fit. Everyone out there probably hated me, but I started playing t-ball at an early age.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the competitor I'm assuming you've become, right? So like going into high school, you obviously at 4 years old you have that competitiveness, right? You're like, that goes out. And t-ball. So I'm assuming that kind of carried on into high school, and that competitiveness has kind of been that driving force of getting you where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's all I'm about is competing. I've always kind of been that way. It drives me crazy when I get around people who don't have that same competitive desire, and I've heard, Kobe kind of talks about that type of stuff in some of his
Mamba mentality.
Yeah, just, it's like we speak a different language. And it doesn't always have to be competitiveness in, athletics. It can be competitiveness in whatever field you're in. And if, I'm speaking to you and I don't see that you have that drive, that competitiveness, it's hard.
It's like a turnoff.
Yeah,
it's just,
kind of. Yeah.
Right.
You can see it in people. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of that way in everything that I do. Obviously, I'm more competitive when it comes to certain things, but it kind of carries over into, your everyday life. So,
yeah.
Being striving to be the greatest, competitor that you could be obviously comes with great sacrifice, Tell me about it. Tell me about your sacrifices that you had to make throughout your career, whether if it was through high school, college, or to where you're at now as a coach. What is it that, that stands out or sticks out like a sore thumb that, you're like, man, I got to do something here if I need to reach that next level as a competitor. What sacrifices did you make?
Yeah, I obviously, I think anything worth having or that you feel is worth having is worth a sacrifice.
Right.
Like if you really want something, you're going to have to sacrifice. And, one of my things was I wanted to play basketball at the college level. I knew that, my dad, like I said, he would drag me to all the Porterville college games, to COS, to all the Monache Porterville games. And anytime there was a big matchup in the Valley, we would be there. I know there was times where we went down to Bakersfield to watch some of those games. And so,
so you weren't really a party guy then. You weren't really
No.
like your party's Fresno State and Bakersfield College going at it. You know?
No, man. It was, I wasn't going to dances in high school. I picked and chose a couple I went to. I went to like prom. I went to a winter formal, I think. But most of my friends were going to those dances starting their freshman year, and they didn't miss one.
Right.
And there was times where, winter formal was going on. This was before social media, so, it wasn't like I was looking at everyone's IG story, but I know what they were doing. They were there having fun and dancing and doing all that type of stuff. And luckily for me, my mom was a teacher in Strathmore and had the keys to the middle school gym.
Yeah.
And so I spent the majority of my nights after school, after practice, I spent the majority of my nights in that gym by myself. While she sat in the classroom and did, her lesson plans and did her work. I was blessed enough to be able to go get in the gym and get shots up.
Yeah.
So it was,
So you didn't get that, well, not get that because you chose, you chose to be in the gym alone. You chose to go through that, those dark times and just, hopefully get a greater, accomplishment from it. So the social part really wasn't your thing, but it also was, it wasn't something that you were like,
Yeah, it started early too because I started playing like on club teams, in middle school. And so like on the weekends, a lot of times I wasn't able to go to sleepovers. I missed a lot of birthday parties because I wasn't in town or I was at practice, but those were sacrifices for me. It's funny because, people, they all have different definitions of love and what love is supposed to be, and a lot of people they can say they love things when it's comfortable, and when it fits into, their schedule, and it's easy for them. But, my definition of love is like when you're willing to sacrifice things regardless of how you feel. I love basketball. Did I want to be at the birthday parties? Sure, yeah. I would have loved to have been there with my friends and hanging out. But my love for basketball, like I was willing to set that stuff aside. I was willing to be disappointed that I wasn't there and then still go get my work in because that's what was important to me. So
yeah, I think when I was younger, I remember hearing you talk to my dad, and I mean, we didn't have the type of, I was young,
mm-hmm.
And you were at our house one time, but it's always stuck in my head that, my dad, I forget how it got brought up or what it was, but you were telling him, in high school, you would be with your dad and, practice would go on, but you would stay there and, put up 500 shots,
mm-hmm.
after practice.
Right.
You know what I mean? And at that point I'm like, this guy's crazy. And now, doing what I do and knowing what I know, I'm like, man, that's what it takes.
Right. Yeah, no, I was definitely blessed with a dad that at this time he was retired back in high school. And so he was at my high school practices. Why Coach Rankin let him sit in the gym, I have no idea. I would have told him to wait outside. But once practice was over, me and him would get up additional shots. He used to take me through the entire jump sole. I don't know if you remember those funky shoes that had the platform on the front. We'd go through that whole process. He also had a weight program that he found in a book of his because he loves to read. He had a college book. It had drills, it had conditioning, and it also had a weight room session. And it was a college weight room session. Like I'd never even been in the weight room, so he had me in there on that every day after practice. And so again, it just goes back to I was blessed with a guy who cared enough to put in that extra time with me. And he kind of instilled that in me. He showed me what it takes to be successful. And he would call me out if I tried to get lazy. I still remember one day at the track, we were trying to do some conditioning stuff. And, I had never done this level of conditioning. And we got out there and we just started raw. Like, here it is. Here's the conditioning workout this book says to do it. There was no lead up to it. I mean, I stretched and stuff, but there was no like progress into being able to run the sprints that it had and the long distance.
Sprint is not easy.
No, and he just threw me out there. And I remember that day, I was done. I was like, I'm done. Like I had like 8 more sprints to do. And I was like, I can't do it. I physically cannot do it. And he challenged me, and he pushed me to get that done. He called me out. He knew what buttons to push and press, and he made me do it. And it may not have been at the level it needed to be at, but it got done. And so, I was just lucky I had someone in my corner that knew what buttons to press, knew when to push them, and was willing to push them.
Tough love.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, tough love.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you talk about the sacrifice, right? You talk about your, working with your dad and those things you had to give up. Any kid listening right now, because obviously you had a successful high school career. I think you were EYL Player of the Year back then. So
back then, that's not that
long ago. Any kid listening to this high school, what are those things? What would you tell them? Because everyone wants to be great. Everyone wants the championships, the Player of the Year, all that stuff. But I mean, not everybody wants to work hard.
Right.
So what are those things you would tell those kids right now that they need to absolutely do? It's like those do's and don'ts to get to that next level, to go play Division I basketball or any level, I guess, of college.
Yeah, I think. So, I mean, I start obviously like these do's and don'ts. If you want to be a college athlete, I'll approach it from that perspective. Yeah. It starts, and this is going to sound like the college coach in me, but this is the way I was raised. My mom, like I said, was a teacher, so this was important to me. It starts in the classroom. It starts by showing up to class every day and putting in the work in the classroom. Because, and my college coach used to say this all the time, whatever you do in the classroom is going to translate over to the floor. If you're lazy in the classroom, you're going to be lazy on the court. If you're late getting things done, you're going to be late getting things done on the floor. And so obviously it starts in the classroom, and this can kind of break off into more, but, as a coach now, we don't look at student athletes whose GPAs aren't above a 3.0.
Yeah.
It's a liability, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're in a position where we have to bring in, young ladies that are going to graduate. And so if your GPA is below a 3.0, we're not going to touch you. Now, there are some universities that they'll take a chance on you if they feel like you're a program changer.
Sure.
But those are at a bare minimum. I mean,
Right.
you're not going to have a whole team of them. And then, are you really going to bank on the fact that I'm the program changer? Coach sees me as a program changer. I don't think so. So like your grades are highly important. So, that's where I would start. I always, growing up, I won't say that I had the best grades. Math used to always trip me up, but I was always like 3.8 or higher. I had a good GPA. I took care of my stuff in the classroom. And then just, you've got to be willing to put in the extra work. So when all your buddies, especially at the high school level, you're not going to have people on your team who are as passionate about the sport as you. You're going to have some teammates out there who may be football players who are out there just to get their conditioning or get their cardio. But if this is your sport and this is what you want to do and this is what you want to play at the next level, so when they leave, you stay. You put in extra work, and I'm going to sound like I'm a Kobe fan, but I'm not. But if you listen to some of his stuff where he talks about, I would wake up at this time and I would work out. I would go home, have breakfast. I would work out again by a certain time. And he'd get 4 workouts in a day while other guys were getting in 2 workouts. So over the years, as you add that up, think about how many more workouts he got in compared to the guy that was only getting in 2 a day.
Right.
And so just having that willingness to put in the work to whether it's, in the weight room or on the floor, like you just have to be willing to do extra work because it does matter. And then, I think another do is obviously surround yourself with people who are going to support you and people who are going to push you. Like,
You need them both.
you need them both.
You need them both.
Absolutely. For instance, I talk about my parents a lot. My dad, in front of other people, not in front of me, in front of other people, he was my biggest fan. Bragged about me all the time. I'm sure the people that he was talking to were tired of hearing him. It probably drove him absolutely crazy. But he would talk about me like I was the greatest thing, and as a dad, that's what he felt was his job. To my face, sure, he would, oh yeah, you had a good game today. But this is what you need to get better at. This is what you did bad. And so those are the type of people you want to have around you. They've got in front of people, in front of the public, they've got your back, right? But behind closed doors, to your face, they're completely honest with you. You got to get better at this. Because, today, I think that's the problem with a lot of these kids coming up today is they think that they want to surround themselves with people that support everything they do.
Yes, people.
Yeah, yes, people. And they're afraid to call them out and check them. And so you get a lot of kids who feel like you owe them something, this is coming from a coach.
They're entitled to something.
They're entitled, exactly. And that just wasn't the case for me. And it goes as far, so I talk about my dad. Yeah, you got to have someone that you really look up to, but even my friends, my best friends, 2 of them, for example, stand out, Freddie and your brother, Adrian. I mean, when I talk about my buddy Freddie, he wasn't an athlete at all. I think he tried out for baseball, sprained his ankle sliding in second base, quit. In middle school, he tried out for the basketball team after 2 weeks, quit. But he wasn't into sports. He was into making money. Like his thing, he became like a real estate agent once we got to college. And I don't even know what he does. His hand is in so many things. I mean, he's just successful. And this is a guy that came from very little, like practically lived with me through high school, right? But he just had this drive that was, you couldn't deny it. You knew he was going to be successful just because
you had a work ethic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was something like, yeah, it may not have translated to the business side of things for me, but as an athlete, I watched that and see like this dude just gets after it. And so this was a guy I had around me, but he's also one of the most blunt people you will ever be around in your life. Like if he cares about you, like it's going to get uncomfortable sometimes. And he is just going to tell you straight up how it is. And I hate him and I love him for it because there's times where he'll say it, and at the time, like, you're like, what? Like, you feel like that about me? But then when you look back on it, you give yourself some time to let it sink in. You realize, like, no, he's right. Like, he's absolutely right, and he's calling me out, and he cares enough to call me out. And then, you know, your brother, for example, like, this guy, he's probably the most competitive person I've ever met in my entire life. You know, like, I'm super competitive. He's super competitive. My first memories of Adrian were on the playground in 4th grade. We used to play this game out there. It was on the 4-square court.
Yeah.
But we would play on 2 squares. It was called War. So all you did was you bounced the ball as hard as you could, and the other person had to catch it and then throw it back. Well, we were the 2 best athletes in 4th grade too. So we used to go at it. I hated Adrian because he would beat me, I would beat him, but like, he was the only person I would lose to. And I hated losing so much. And we both had the same reaction when we lost. Like, we'd be pissed. And, you know, he and I have been in, I remember 5th grade, we were playing basketball at PE, almost got in a fist fight. You know, like, this was the guy that was around me because he pushed me to be better. Like, he was just as competitive as me. And it wasn't just in sports. It was in every facet, you know, like, we were always competing. I still remember I rented Tony Hawk. This is back when Blockbuster was still a thing. I rented Tony Hawk on Nintendo 64. I played it. Your brother came over. We played it at my house, and I beat him. There was a part where you could go like open park, and you just had a time, and you had to get a certain score. And I beat him like 5 times. It pissed him off so bad that he went to Blockbuster, rented the game, had the game for an entire week. By the next weekend, he invited me over. I came over to the house. And when I say his score was like 10 times more than my score. Like, he must have sat and practiced for hours because he was so pissed off that I beat him. And it may seem, you know, like, you look at it in that perspective, but that's carried on. Like, that went to high school, that went to college. Like, we're just competitive, and you have to have those people who match you and push you. Like, if I had a group of friends and no one in that group of friends was competitive, how do I continue to build my competitive? How do I
progress?
Yeah, how do I progress? And that was Adrian for me. Like, he pushed me to be, and still to this day, like, there's things we do when we lift. You know, we've started golfing together, and you know, like, yeah, we started golfing, and we're both pretty bad, but Adrian's getting a lot better, and it makes me get better. I catch myself watching instructional videos now because I don't want him to beat me. And so, you know, like, that's just an example of the sports and stuff. Like, he's obviously, you know, he's big for me, and he's pushed me in a lot of different ways. And so my circle, I'd say, like, you have to have a circle. You have to have a solid circle who isn't afraid to push your buttons. At the end of the day, you don't want a bunch of yes men around you at all.
And it's like that old saying that, you know, you should never be the smartest one in the room, right?
Right.
Whether that's actually intelligence or physical capability, competitiveness, whatever it is, always surround yourself with people that are pushing you, and people that are probably maybe better than you, right?
Right.
It's contagious. It's definitely contagious, you know, to be around people like that. You know what I mean? Because it's like you mentioned earlier before, you know, if you're around somebody that's kind of like, yeah, you know what, go ahead and win. You know, I the same, like, all right.
yeah, right.
You know?
Well, it's like, how do you know progress? I mean, I think you can get to a certain level by being comfortable.
Yeah.
But to break through that wall, there's going to be times where you have to get uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, if you have people around you who aren't scared to make you uncomfortable, who aren't scared to call you out, like, it's only going to push you to get to that next level.
And so now, you know, going into the next question, you know, being a college coach, you know, is that one of the most challenging things that you have as a coach, you know, getting kids to break that threshold of getting to that next level for their career, you know, is how hard is that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these kids that we recruit, they do have, not all of them, but you run into some who have that sense of entitlement because, you know, they're playing on some of the top club teams. Their coaches are really pushing for them to get that Division I scholarship. Their parents are pushing it. And and they get there, and sometimes, you know, when we say they come in as a freshman and the first thing they do is sit on the bench, like a lot of those kids can't handle that. Yeah. You know, like they've never been in that position.
They've been told they're the greatest.
They've never been in that role.
Years,
yeah, exactly. Right? And so like if you have a circle around you that is afraid to keep it real with you, they're going to support your claims. Oh, coach is tripping today, or, you know, coach just doesn't like me. Yeah. And they go and they do something crazy because like they've never been in that position, you know. And
well, you were, you know, we were talking yesterday, you know, and you said, you know, there are guys that could jump higher than you, mm-hmm. run faster than you, probably maybe dribble, maybe shoot better than you. Right. But you started. Yeah. You know, because you knew your role. Mm-hmm. You knew how you were going to better the program. The coach knew how you were going to better the program, which ultimately gave you a starting spot. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, coming in my freshman year of college, you know, I was up at Granite, I was averaging like 23, 24 again. I don't remember what it was, but I was putting up points. And I was coming off of all these, you know, awards and accolades and all this stuff. And I go down there to Bakersfield, and my freshman year, I sat the bench. Like for the start of the season, I was on the bench. I did not move off of that. I was the guy that you saw last night for Duke and Kansas and all of them, that his shooting shirt never came off and he never broke a sweat. That was me. But because of, you know, I'm certain of this, because of who my circle was, I wasn't ever content with that. Right. And I never made excuses for it. I never went to practice and was like, woe is me. You know, like, oh, coach he's not going to put me in anyway. I might as well just go through the motions. Like, I came to practice every day with the intent of getting on the floor. And I used that. And by the end of that season, I had started a game as a freshman. I was playing, you know, my minutes increased towards the end of the season because I finally figured out what it took to get on the floor. And I put in the work every single day. And so I think, you know, a lot of kids, it's like you get in a fight, right? And someone's beating on you. Well, what are you going to stand there and just take it? Like, you're just going to allow them to beat you up, you know? Or are you going to fight back? And a lot of kids these days, I feel like they get in those situations and they don't fight back. You know, they kind of accept it, or they start making excuses. Well, an excuse doesn't get you anything. It just, you know, it lets you mentally let you out of it, but you know, they don't fight back, and so they get buried. Where you just got to go in and ready to work every day and put it all on the court.
Yeah, you know, the thing about excuses, I mean, excuses does get you something. It gets you the attention that you're not looking for. Yeah, you know, and I think that's what's the problem, you know, is because people, you know, once they feed off an excuse, you know, they get around, you know, those people that are in their circle, which are usually people like, you know what, it's not your fault. Mm-hmm. It's not you, man, it's them. And that becomes, you know, it hinders their progress, like we keep repeatedly talking about, you know. Right. So, you know, excuses do get you something. They get you the unnecessary attention that you're looking for.
Obviously, I'm not sure exactly how basketball works, but I'm sure you guys all are on the recruiting trail for the most part, especially, you know, being assistants and things like that, helping the head coach out. What's been your experience, and like, what are you guys specifically kind of looking for? Like, when you go see a kid, what's something that's going to kind of turn you guys off? You talked about grades. If you don't have a 3.0, automatically kind of, you're not necessarily looking at them a lot. But so what's the kind of thing,
that criteria
you guys are looking for when you go sit down in someone's home?
Right. Well, a lot of it starts, like, you know, the club scene for us is huge now, like club basketball. And there's tournaments, viewing tournaments, where we can go and watch all these different teams play, and we see the players that we like, and that's where we start the process there. And so it's all based on what I see as a coach. And so if I'm sitting at a game and your body language is terrible, or I see you get into, you know, say a team takes a lead on you and you hang your head, but I don't want that. Like, that's not going to win me any games. You know, that's not going to win us games, because it's going to get tough. Like, there's going to be times where we're down and we got to fight our way back. I don't want a kid that is going to give up and quit on me. And so obviously, like, you got to pass the visual test. Like, you got to have the skills, obviously. You got to compete every possession. We don't want kids that are, taking possessions off where they're, sometimes they'll go hard, but then
high and low.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Coach has to get on them to because their effort will drop off, and the coach will have to get on them to get them to go hard again. Like, we don't want that. Body language, we don't want that. And then, once we kind of zero in on kids who we feel has, a kid that has the talent that we're looking for, and we start the process of recruiting them, it's all based on, how do you carry yourself? Because you are, at the end of the day, like, you may be a good basketball player, but are you going to be a good representation of our program? Are you going to be a good representation of our university? Are you going to do the things that we want you to do? Like, this is before stepping on the floor. Like, what kind of person are you? And today, Instagram and social media becomes a big thing because these kids think, oh, this is my social media, this is my Instagram. Well, we look at that, and so, like, if you're on there posting stuff that doesn't really fit our narrative and doesn't fit, what we're trying to build at our university, immediately, like, we're off of that.
Done, yeah.
Done with it. And so, like, that's one thing, like, your social media, you need to be careful of what goes up on there because we are looking. And then, obviously we see, academics. Where are you academically? Again, like I touched on that is super important. And especially, for us, I'm the academic coach. I handle a lot of our academics. And so, I'm speaking from experience. Like, I know if you're not above a 3.0, we are not touching you. Now like I said, some will, some people will, it's different, but we're not touching you because, our goal is to graduate kids. And then if we bring in so many kids and they don't graduate, we start losing money. We start losing we lose our job. I mean, at the end of the day, like, we will not be there. So, academically, you just got to, take care of your stuff. And then, it's tough because there's restrictions on how much you can talk to a kid during the recruiting process. And so you can get to know them as best you can. You can get to know their family as best you can, their circle as best you can. But you really find out the most about the kid once they step on campus, because everyone in the recruiting process is going to say the right things. Like, the coaches are all going to say the right thing about the kid. The kid's is going to say all the right things about themselves and their work ethic and all of that. But it's once you get there that you really find out, like, what are they made of? So, like, you've got to make sure you got those boxes checked. Like,
Yeah.
what do you do on the floor? How do you compete?
Body language.
Yeah. How you carry yourself off the floor, and how you represent yourself. I mean, in academics, you check those boxes, you're going to put yourself in a position to.
You started off coaching men's basketball, right? And then now you're assistant coach for the women's program at CSU Bakersfield. Right. What's the difference in recruiting those, men and women? I mean, it's similar process, I would imagine, but are there, just the friend groups you kind of see, social media presence sometimes different? Is there anything that is different between the recruiting the two, or not really?
No, not really. It's pretty much the same.
You just see them as athletes.
You're going to go through the same processes again. Like, you're absolutely going to look at their character. Like, you're going to take all of the same stuff into account. The differences come in the on the court stuff.
Sure.
That's a whole topic that you see a lot of today, because you see a lot of these female athletes pushing for equal pay. And then you got these trolls on the internet who love to troll female these female athletes and say that, oh, the game is boring and all of this. And, but that, that's just people who haven't been around the game and who haven't watched much of it, because the only real difference is the physicality. Like, you look at a male athlete, like the men's game, like last night, you watch it, they're faster, they jump higher. But as far as, like, the fundamentals go, there is no difference.
Well, I mean, we got women head coaches now in the NBA, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
And they know the game just as much as anybody else,
Yeah, and I think, you just have to learn to appreciate the game for what it is. Like people go in, these trolls, they expect the women's game to be like the men's game. Well, it can't be like the men's game as far as the physicality goes. But as far as the fundamentals, like shooting, passing, dribbling, it's the same. And so you see it a lot. And if you're a true basketball fan, you can appreciate both for what they are. And so, that's really the only real difference. Heck, if I had to say it, and I'll say it, I feel like women are more coachable than men. Like, that's my experience. I don't know, other people may have a different one. That's my experience.
In what ways?
All of them. Like, I know I had teammates, like they were so frustrating because coaches would try to coach them and they were always like pulling against them, and they wouldn't change. And all, my interactions with the players that I've come across on the women's side, like, they're dying to learn. They're ready to learn. Like, everything you teach them, they're trying to implement it the second you teach them. And so, I played, I was probably hard-headed too, sometimes, but, no, that's the biggest difference for me. And, that's why it's frustrating to see some of these trolls get on there and they start talking that
giving their opinion.
It's like, you guys have no idea. Obviously, you haven't watched enough basketball to really know how good the women's game is. Like, it's good.
Yeah.
So,
so you've been coaching for now 11 years, correct?
I've been on the women's side for 11. Yeah.
11.
Yep.
So, throughout that 11 years and some, who's helped you along the way learn the coaching side of basketball? Who's been a good mentor for you?
There's three of them. Like, I won't go crazy on this, but there's three guys that really come to mind when I start thinking about mentors. And, the guy I work for now, I've been with him for 11 years. I'm not including him in these three, but he's definitely been someone who's helped me along the way. I've learned a lot from him. But the three guys that come to mind were my three assistants when I played. The first one his name was Brian Dignan. He was assistant coach when I got down there to Cal State Bakersfield. I learned toughness from him. He's one of the toughest guys I've ever met in my entire life. He's a no BS type of guy. He does not take excuses. And so when you're around someone like that, like, if you feel like you want to give an excuse, you just swallow it and you go on about whatever you've got to go on about, because he's not going to want to hear it. He taught me a lot about hard work, because, when I went to Cal State Bakersfield, it was Division II, so the resources weren't the same. So he did a lot. He was doing film, he was doing scouts, he was doing recruiting, he was doing academics.
All in.
Never made an excuse about it. Did everything. Whatever it took, whatever he had to do as an assistant coach to make his head coach look good, he did it. And that was something that I took with me, and then loyalty was another thing with him. There were so many times where I saw his loyalty put on display. And for me, that's something that is super important to me. If you know me, I've got the same group of friends I've had since I was, my best friend, or one of my best friends I've known since he was 4 years. We were 4 years old. Adrian, I've known since 4th grade. Zach Brown, known him since about 3rd grade. So, my loyalty is highly important to me. And in this profession, when you see the coaches, the turnover like crazy, and you see sometimes assistants will stab the head coach in the back and
jump ships.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so loyalty, I learned that from him, because there was lots of times where he could have probably left Bakersfield for a better job, and he didn't. He stayed because of the people that were there and the person he was working for. He stayed, and I learned that from him. The second one was Jeff Probst. He was an assistant for 2 years while I was playing, and then I worked with him for an additional 2 years. And I got to spend a lot of time with him once I became the grad assistant, and then I became a Dobo, and I spent a lot of time with him and got to know him.
Yeah.
And his IQ of the game was at a different level. So I learned a lot about basketball from him, but I think the biggest thing I learned from him was about life. This is a guy who survived non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, who was on his deathbed, while he was going through chemo, he would go and hoop. Like he'd be out there throwing up.
Wow. Yeah.
During chemo, he would go hoop because that's what made him, as he loved it, and it made him feel good. But so he had a really good job before he came to Cal State Bakersfield. He was working in sales in like the Irvine area. And I can't tell you exactly what he was selling. I just know he was doing really well for himself. And he gave that up to come and coach. And he took a huge pay cut to do so. But he comes in and he coaches. And this guy was probably one of the most immature people I've ever met in my life. Like he was always playing around, always laughing and joking. You were scared to say anything around him because he would just jump on you like that. And he was ridiculous. Like he was always joking around and just making noises and faces and teasing everybody. And I remember I asked him one time, I was like, man, why? I was like, can you grow up? Like, what is wrong with you? You're like 40 something and you act like the biggest kid in the room. And he said what he had gone through with, you know, his chemotherapy and everything. Right. He was on his deathbed. And he said that's when you start to die pretty much. And when you start taking yourself too seriously and when you grow up, like, that's when you start to die. He lived every day with that youthful exuberance. And he swears that's why he beat his cancer. That's why he beat it, because of the way he approached life and just finding the joy in life, finding the happiness in life even during the hardest times, like finding the positive side of things, you know, and just never taking yourself too seriously. And that's something that, you know, if you know me away from here, I'm always joking. I may not be as bad as him, but I'm always joking, clowning around, talking, laughing. I know when it's time to be serious, but, you know, taking that perspective into life. And then the last one was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Last Chance U, but
yeah,
John Mosley.
Yeah.
He was an assistant there. I worked with him for 2 years, but I played for him for 2 years as well. And I have a little cameo on there. They have a team picture. I have a lot more hair then, but you know that he was there the same time I was there. And,
really?
And yeah. And so you can watch that show, and a lot of people would ask me like, is that really how he is? Like, is he really like that? And that is 100% John Mosley. That was not, yes, yeah. He was not putting on for the cameras. He was not acting. That is him 100%. But the thing I got from him is you have to be comfortable being yourself, and you don't waver from that. I am who I am, and this is the person you're going to get, and you're either going to like it or you're not. And that you see that with Mosley when, you know, he talks about his faith. There was a lot of things that, you know, with the other coaches, not saying they were heathens or anything like that, but like he would not participate because he was a family man. He's a man of Christ, you know, like that's what was important to him, and he would not waver from that. And he was completely accepted by the players, completely accepted by the coaches, because he just stayed true to who he was. And, you know, I remember times where teammates came out that absolutely loved Mosley. And they're like, man, Mosley's in there praying for me again. You know, he's in there praying for me. Like, oh, man, I'm not trying to sit in there for all that. But they love that guy because he was himself, and he was true to himself. And that's another thing, you know, and also the family side. Like, that is the ultimate family man. His family comes first. And, you know, that's something that's, you know, I've sat here and I talked about my mom and dad, my sister and her my niece and nephew, you know, like, that's super important to me as well. And so it showed, like, in this profession, you can still be, because you hear it all the time. Like, oh, how can you have a family in that profession? You travel so much, you're gone all the time, you're in the office all the time. It's possible. You just have to, your priorities have to be straight. And he's kind of one of those guys that showed me that it was possible.
It's possible.
Yeah. So those three, I mean, those are the guys. Anytime I think of it, you know, I speak really highly of them. Obviously, like I said, the head coach I work for now has taught me a lot. And I'm grateful. He gave me my first opportunity when maybe I wasn't deserving of that opportunity, but he took a chance on me. And so super grateful for that. And I this answer may change in the next, you know, if I ever do it again, he might be one of those. But yeah, I've been all blessed to have, you know, good people in my life.
I would say for sure.
How are you able to, I guess, balance that? Because, I mean, you see in the coaching profession, it tends to be maybe some people don't have their priorities straight. You know, divorce rates are pretty high and things like that. So what do you think the keys, just from your perspective, you've been around a lot of coaches, you've been around, the different programs or whatever. What do you think the keys are to kind of having that balance with family and keeping those priorities straight?
Don't get married. No, I'm just kidding. That's where I'm at. I mean, not everyone's path's the same, obviously, but first and foremost, like for me, like I've been at Bakersfield for 11 years and I've had opportunities to pursue other jobs at other universities. But the reason I haven't left has a lot to do with my boss, and what is important to him is important to me. He's a family man. Family and friends are really important to him, and he understands how to have the balance of work and life. Like, there's a lot of coaches in this profession who live and breathe basketball, and they don't know anything else. They spend all day in the office, and that's all they want to do. That's all they want to think about. I'm not that way. My boss isn't that way. And so, it's just working with someone who knows when it's time to work, but also allows you to be a person, outside of that. And so, that's a big reason why I'm still here. And there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of reasons why I'm still there, but that's one of the main ones is, that, and my family's super close to where, Bakersfield. So I can come home at any chance I get. My two best friends live in Bakersfield. So that's another reason. But it's knowing when to work, and that there's going to be times where you're going to be in the office late. You're going to be in the office early, and you're going to stay late. Like, there's times in the season that's going to happen. Yeah. That in July, you're going to travel for recruiting pretty much the entire month of July. That around Christmas time, you might get 3 days off to come see family for Christmas. You may practice on Thanksgiving,
But it goes back to being surrounded by people who support and love you, and that helps, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those are going to happen, but you also know that, like, I know my boss he understands how important my family is, and he's going to give me time once the season's done, once we get into a space where we can relax a little. Rest. Like, he let me go on a guy's golf trip, 2 weekends ago.
Oh, nice.
He was cool with that. And so it's just, you gotta find somebody who shares the same values as you. Obviously if it wouldn't work for me if I was working for someone that wanted to be in the office all day, every day, and that was it. That wouldn't work for me. And so it's just knowing who you are, knowing what's important to you, and sharing that with the people that you're working with in this profession.
Yeah. Do you have any, and you don't have to answer this, do you have any funny recruiting stories or anything, like just on the road with your fellow coaches, or just sitting in anyone's houses, or anything that you could share?
I wouldn't say I've got, lots of funny stuff. You got a bunch of coaches sitting around talking, there's always funny things that come up.
Yeah.
No, not so much. I've seen coaches trip and fall while we've been out recruiting. That's always, anytime someone trips and falls and doesn't hurt themselves, it's pretty funny, and I've seen coaches get ran over by recruits. That's pretty funny. I know we've gone into a couple home visits where, the family cooked, and, one of my coworkers is probably one of the pickiest eaters you've ever met in your I always tease him, like, man, you got the palate of like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
You want chicken
nuggets,
chicken nuggies and French fries. And we went in there, and I don't know if it was the mom or the grandma cooked something crazy, and his face was just, it's like he's not trying to be disrespectful, but it was funny to me because I knew him, and I knew there is no way
he's gonna eat
he's
this.
About to put this in his mouth. So me being me, I instigated it the entire time. Like, you want some of this? You want
some more?
So he has this thing with white food. I guess in college, his roommate used to eat tartar sauce with everything, and the dude, I don't know if it's breath stank or whatever, but so he's just scarred from that. He said he always had tartar sauce on the edge of his lip, and it just grossed him out. So anything white, you get around people eating white stuff,
ranch,
he freaks out. We were at a lunch one day, and a guy they handed out Klondike bars, and the dude across from him started eating this Klondike bar. Well, he had white stuff on the corner of his lip. Man, Coach Zay almost, and that's Xavier Johnson. He almost lost it right there. Like he could not get, and it was funny because the tables were so tight.
Yeah.
He couldn't get out like fast enough. Like he was trying to push people out of the way, and yeah, no. So that happened at one of the recruiting visits. But I mean, I haven't had anything too crazy go on.
Still a lot of years left.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
exactly. Yeah, let's hope so. And let's hope so.
Yeah. So, 11 years plus and some, that's a chunk of time of your life. You know what I mean? Like, where do you see this going now? You know what I mean? What does the future hold for you? You know, what is something, that you're maybe got your eye on or what is it that,
Yeah. I saw this question, and it's a tough one because I think prior to COVID, I would have told you, oh yeah, I'm trying to be a head coach. I think, obviously that's still a goal. I'd love to be a head coach at some point.
At any level or at the college level.
Yeah, I mean, it just whatever cards are dealt.
Sure.
'Cause, like, me, and I went to school initially to be a teacher.
Right.
And so there's times where I can think about going into teaching and coaching at the high school level. But so like I said, prior to COVID, I would have given you an answer. Since COVID, with things becoming so uncertain, I did a lot of reflecting during COVID.
Sure. A lot of people did.
Yeah. And I've learned to really be in the moment, be where your feet are.
Right.
I try not to look ahead too much.
Right.
If an opportunity comes along that I want, then it'll come along, and I'll look into it at that point.
God will take care of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And right now it's, where my feet are, they're at Cal State Bakersfield.
Absolutely.
And I have a group of young ladies there who, when you're around them as much as we are, and you put as much into them as we do, you want to see them become successful.
Right.
And so looking ahead, I don't feel like if I were to say, oh yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at that. Well, in looking at those things, am I giving them the same effort I would give if I was just there?
Agree. 100%.
And
yeah.
so,
the commitment.
Yeah. And so obviously I would love to, be a head coach at some point, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen because, where I'm at now, I'm impacting lives. And I'm happy, like if I wasn't happy, it'd be a different story, but I'm happy. And so I'm fine saying like, I'm here. I'm not really looking ahead. If something comes up, I'll address it when it comes up. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with that.
With, so many changes, especially coming out of COVID and stuff with not just basketball, but college sports in general. We see the transfer portal and stuff the last few years just getting crazy and football, basketball, everything. What are some of the challenges and kind of the future of, I guess, Division I college basketball and just college sports in general with that kind of recruiting process, transfer portal? Like, what are some of those challenges you guys are kind of facing going into the future?
That transfer portal is a beast, and that's a whole topic in itself. And I know if you get on Twitter, you start seeing how people feel about it. People have mixed emotions about it. Me, to each their own. If you feel like you want to go into the transfer portal and this, like, where you are isn't the place for you, then who am I to tell you that it is?
Yeah.
Because you do see there's a huge push for, your mental health now. And if you're in a position where you're not able to be yourself, where you're stressed, where you feel like you aren't getting a fair shake, who am I to tell you that that's not the case? I would definitely let these individuals know before they put their name in that transfer portal that there's a chance that once you go in there, you may not get picked up. Because, I mean, this thing is...
It's a risk.
Man, one day it went from 600 kids to 800 kids to 1,000 kids. Like, it's growing every day. And so, it's difficult. You see a lot of coaches say, oh, the transfer portal is the worst thing and these kids, blah, blah, blah. And then, you got people like me who are, if that's the right decision for you, if you feel that's the right decision for you, then go ahead. But I also feel, I had this conversation with someone the other day. I feel like, my freshman year, for example, A lot of kids these days, had they had the same experience I had, would have gone into the transfer portal immediately.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't playing. They felt like they were better. They weren't playing. They would have gone in the transfer portal. In the long run of life, though, what does that teach you?
Right. It doesn't really solve the problem.
No, not at all. It's like, okay, you had a little difficulty, you know, that this came up and you just bailed. You
Flight.
didn't,
You had flight versus fight.
Exactly. Like you didn't. Now, like I said, not every situation is the same. This is how I look at it from my perspective because of my experiences. I feel like I'm a better person today because I stayed and I went through it and I earned it. And there's something about that whether it's in sports or it goes to your everyday life, profession, whatever, you earned it. Nobody can take that away from me. You know, like every year the coaches, they tell me in my end of the year meetings, you know what, Zach, you're really good. You did good for us, but we're going to try to recruit over the top of you. Told me that to my face. I was like, okay, go do it. I dare you, do it. Please do it. And I'd see who they brought in that was going to take my spot, and I made sure they did not take my spot. And so, like, if I just run from things all the time, and like I said, this is my hot take on the transfer portal. Like, if I don't sit there and fight my way through it and I don't earn it, you know, I can miss out on an important life lesson. You know what I mean?
Right.
But again, like I said,
to each their own.
To each their own, and not every story is the same. And I'm sure there's some, you know, there's some situations where the transfer portal was the right decision. Right. Yeah.
You know, earlier we talked about balance, right? You know, that a sense of balance needs to be created, and you know, but me personally, I have a different outlook on it, and maybe it depends on the situation, but you know, to achieve a high level of success, you know, I don't feel like there is a such thing as balance. I feel like you're all in or you're not, you know, and then hopefully along the way you are around those people that support you and love you. You know, David Goggins, he says it best is you're trying to be the best. There's no such thing as balance. Yeah, you might get it here and there along the way, but when you're trying to do something, balance doesn't exist, you know? So.
Well, it was like the quote, it came from Coach K last night. And after they lost, I don't know if you guys, it's been circulating on Instagram, and I think that's where I saw it. But he said something like, "You're either crying tears of joy, or sorrow." Yeah, and he's like, and those only come from putting everything into something, and that's the case. You know, like and that's why, like I say, I can't be around people who play a sport, and then at the end of the, like, say they lose, right? Like, it drives me crazy, and you know, our players are guilty of this too sometimes. Like, they'll play, we'll have a game, say we lose, and they're on the bus. So, you know, they go in, they shower, they come out to the bus. So that's about 30-minute time frame, right?
Right.
They get on the bus, and they're laughing, and they're giggling, joking. Me, being me, the competitor I am, that doesn't sit well with me.
Right.
Because I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to answer a text. I don't want to have a conversation for at least 2 hours.
Yeah, you're back to
and depending on how bad the loss was, it may be a day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to talk to you. I mean, we went out to the conference tournament this year, and we lost to Hawaii by 1 point, right? So Hawaii ends up winning the whole thing. They go to the NCAA tournament, but we lost to them by a point. And we felt like there were some calls at the end of the game, which, you know, every team probably feels like, but this one was pretty bad. And we felt like there were some calls that went against us that were atrocious. So it made it an even worse loss.
And more sour.
You felt like you didn't necessarily lose it. It was kind of taken from you a little bit. I don't know if I made a phone call for an entire, like, day and a half. You know, like, I sat in my room in the stuff I coached in, and I just stared at the ceiling. You know, and this is as a coach. You know, like, that's the type of competitor that I am. You know, like, even today, like, I'll play City League. I'll come home every once in a while. I'll go play in the McDermott. And, you know, I'm not playing for anything over there. My important games are beyond me, you know, like, but that's just the McDermott League. If I lose over there, the whole drive back to Bakersfield, like, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, get the whiteboard out.
Yeah, like, I'm thinking, not so much that, it's just like, how do we lose? Like, I don't handle it.
It doesn't sit well. Yeah.
No, not at all. And I feel like that's one of the beautiful things about competition though. It's like, you know, playing sports, it's every time you step on the floor, you put yourself in a position to where you're either going to feel joy or you're going to feel sorrow, you know? And so like, it's funny because like as a competitor, you're like, well, I can avoid all that and just not play, or I can not compete and just avoid those emotions. But like in some way, in some crazy way, like that sorrow makes you really love it because you don't want to feel it. So like you can compete your butt off. And I think I'm addicted to that. Because I'll like until my knees fall off, I'll play something, whether it's city league, whether it's slow pitch softball, whether it's golf. Like I'm going to be playing something.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a good segue to kind of end on there. You have anything else to add, Zach? Or anything else you want to?
I mean, it's you know, my whole take with you is that, you know, not just on the court, but in life, you got to compete. You got to compete. You know, there's nothing wrong with living a comfortable life. There isn't. Mm-hmm. But to reach a true level of success, man, you got to have that sickening work ethic, and you just got to go out and compete flat out.
Yep.
And, you know, and when adversity strikes and it hits, you know, get that whiteboard out, analyze, you know, and adapt when adversity comes, and just attack it, get after it.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think, you know, as I look at who I am and, you know, what I've done, you know, there's people who have, you know, this is my story. This is what I've done for myself, and this is what was successful for me. And, you know, I think my biggest thing and my biggest takeaway is just the people that you surround yourself with. At the end of the day, that's the most important, is who you surround yourself with.
Absolutely. And
you be selective in that group, and you don't just let anyone in. You only allow the ones in that you want in there. And, you know, for me, like, you know, I've said it a million times, and that's going to be the takeaway, I'm sure, is like my best friends and my family. And that's, you know, I'll run into some people who I'll call friends along the way, you know, and who, you know, I might hang out with and do some things with. But at the end of the day, the people I'm coming back to are those friends that I grew up with. Exactly. Yeah. And those people who got me to where I am. And they're truly the only reason I got to where I got to. Like, absolutely. You know, that's the only reason, you know, and I give them all the credit. You know, it's, you know, I had the hard work, but it was all instilled in me from someone, you know, in my circle. And so, you know, that's the most important. Just be selective in who you allow around you. And, you know, you can't take everyone with you. Yeah. You know, at some point, like some of those friends that you have, you may have to cut off because, you know, they may hold you back. They may not allow you to be the best of you. It doesn't mean that you don't still care for them. It doesn't mean that you're not still there for them if they need you. But you understand that there's a time and a place, you know, and so that's my biggest thing.
Yeah. It's like, if those people are not, you know, impacting and helping your, you know, your family, fitness, finances, and those types of things, then it's like, if you're not helping me become a better person and stuff like that, then it's, you know, you got to start cutting some of those people off. And it's kind of, it's hard to say that, but it's true.
Right. And in doing so, cutting them off, learn something from it, you know, I mean, learn something from that, because everything's an experience.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not just cut off, done, that's it, I'm moving on. No, like,
reflect on it.
Reflect on it.
Yeah, cutting off sounds a little...
Yeah, cutting off's a little harsh.
A little harsh. I don't, like I said, I don't think you cut them off.
You learn from it, you reflect.
Yeah, right. You just know, like I said, there's certain, you allow certain people to have access to certain parts of you.
Sure.
And so those people aren't allowed into these parts of
100%.
And if something they're doing is a detriment to what I'm trying to accomplish, obviously I'm not allowing that to come into play with me.
Right.
And so, you know, like, and it's especially important for, you know, like small towns like Strathmore and Porterville, you know, where
everybody knows something.
Yeah. There's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to stay here and be where you are. Not at all. But if you're someone who, okay, I want to go play college ball, I want to go to school away from this area, but your friends are all, I want to be here, I don't want to go anywhere, this is what I want, then it's going to be hard for you, like, to be around that. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
they're okay with that. They're comfortable with that.
Makes you second guess your decisions.
Yeah, it's like you kind of want to try to get around people that, okay, you guys are good. You stay here. I'll come back and visit you. But let me get around these people who have these same dreams, these same desires that I do. And so, that's what I always tell. My mom has me come back, and I do, she has career day. And I come back and kind of like this. I talk on the coaching side. I talk about the athletic side. I talk about, going to school and everything like that. And I always tell those kids the same thing. It's like, it's okay to want to be here. Heck, I might move back here at some point. Like I said, I love the area. We have a lot of people who talk trash about it. I love the area. I think it makes us who we are. We're unique because we are from here. And I tell them, like, it's okay to want to come back here and be here. But at some point, go. At some point, whether it's going to college or it's just, taking, opportunities to get away and go experience different places, different areas, different cultures, and then you can always come back. But, I always tell them that. At least get out and see what there is before you decide to,
form an opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
And come back and, go get all that experience and have those, those opportunities, and then come back and bring it back to the youth here,
Right. Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
I went to school, like I was telling him, I went to school to be a teacher, and that was my goal. I wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. I wanted to be a 4th grade teacher. And not that she needed to tell me this, but my mom would stress, like, you're not teaching anywhere but Strathmore. Like, there's no way. You're not teaching in Bakersfield. You're not teaching in Delano. You're not teaching in Visalia. You are teaching in Strathmore. And she didn't have to tell me that because I already felt that way. I love my community. I've had experiences. I would love, that's why every career day I try to come back. Like, she nags me about it, but I try to come back so I can tell them about my experiences. Like, look, this is what is available. You can go and do other things. You can always come back, which is fine, but go experience these other things, and I feel like it's good when we get people who have done things here, not saying like I've done the most amazing things ever, but I have experiences. I've experienced things, and I'm able to come back and let the youth know, like, look, man, like, this is what it takes. This is what you need to do. We need more people like that.
For sure.
And these people who are connected here need to come and share that same knowledge because, sometimes you feel overlooked here. And so to know that there are people, that there's people that will support you, the people that will be there for you, that have done it, it makes, them push for more.
Absolutely.
So
and that's exactly why we're sitting here today. And that's exactly why we're doing this podcast, Quest for Success podcast, is bringing people like you from our community on and to share that advice to these kids, to these, who, not just kids, but coaches and everyone else that's, on that quest for success, I guess we say, right? So, and I appreciate it, Zach, just taking the time to be here and continue, just giving back to this community, and not just our community but the whole Central Valley. So I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and everything you're doing.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Man, thank you. This was obviously a special one, so to say. I've known you my whole entire life, basically. So I appreciate the time, coming down here and talking with us.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah, where can people follow you at? Or are your socials open for people to follow you or no?
Yeah. I mean,
they're just a bunch of half-court shots. It ain't nothing special.
My Instagram, I keep it kind of private.
Okay.
Just because, not that there's all it is pictures of his brother's daughter and me working out and shooting half-court shots.
A couple of dogs and cats.
Maybe some golfing.
Yeah.
Nothing. I don't think anyone would be too excited about that. And then I do have a Twitter. I think it's just Zack Grasmick. I don't even know it off the top of my head, but I do have a Twitter that's open. It's more of a college-based, like, recruiting type of thing.
Yeah.
And, I
there we go.
post anything.
Sure.
I retweet stuff that I think is important to student athletes or important for life. So, I mean, that might be worth trying to find if you want to find it. But
and your guys' season opened up November or so next year? I mean, the end of this year.
Yeah. So we start up. I think our first game right now is scheduled for November 8th at USC. So we go down there. We got UCLA too on the schedule.
Nice.
I think we're like one game away from having it finalized. But right now we start workouts this next week. We get in the gym. We start getting in individual work, and we'll go from there, trying to build it up, still recruiting, still bringing in recruits on visits and everything, trying to finish this roster.
Yeah.
We've got to find, like, I think there's about 3 more that we need to bring in. So
Transfer portal.
transfer.
No,
Yeah, I mean, we've been in there. We definitely have been in there. And every coach is going to be in there, and that thing's only gonna. It's
free agency. That's what it is.
It's crazy, man. Yeah. These teams now are built on the transfer portal.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is what it is.
I've seen a football program that I can't remember. It was a D1 program, but it was one of the smaller ones, like a Western Kentucky or something. It wasn't Western Kentucky, but one of those. I think they only brought like 5 or 6 like high school kids in.
Yeah,
like this for this recruiting class, like crazy.
Yeah,
it's all transfer portal kid.
It kind of depends on where you are, like as a program.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're, this is coaching side of things. Like if you're at the beginning of your contract as a coach and you're trying to build your own thing, you're probably going to bring in freshmen,
right?
Because they're raw and you get to mold them the way you want to mold them. If you're in a position where you know you got to win games, and you're in a position where
jobs
you might
on the line.
Exactly, like you want kids who have been in it, that you don't have to necessarily
experience
how to do it. Yeah,
right.
Experience, and it goes a long way. Like, sure, there's some freshmen that you could bring in that can be program changers, but there's a lot of kids in the portal who have kind of been in it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of where you sit and like what's important to you. You know, it's it is what it is.
Well, in the profession today, in any college sports or any sports, like you got to win now.
Oh, yeah.
Your job's on the line all the time. So
yeah, that's one of that should have been a question. How do you handle stress? Because it is, I mean, when you talk about the last couple of years have been more stressful than others. COVID played a big role in that. You know, this year I used to not have gray hairs. I've got gray hairs popping up on the side of my head. I've got them on the top of my head. And, you know, it is a stressful profession because you know that, yeah, you can graduate all the kids you want to graduate. You can have, you know, like we've had 3.318 cumulative GPAs, you know, like we do pretty well in the classroom. But at the end of the day, it's about winning games.
Right.
And, you know, when things aren't going well, you're constantly trying to fix it. You're trying to find, okay, well, what do I do? And you don't sleep because you're up. Your brain's too busy trying to find the solution. And so, yeah, man. I mean, it's a stressful profession. It's a super rewarding profession.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, I've traveled to places I never thought I'd travel to. I've helped kids graduate that, you know, a lot of were first generation graduates from university, and so it's super rewarding. But it's also going to cost you some color in your head, and maybe a few hairs, and I mean, you know about that, but yeah, I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, well, good luck, man.
Yeah, good luck and everything. Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on again. Taking the time.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.